All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our professional development lunch talk hosted by Spectrum. Today, we have a student grad panel to cover any burning questions that we've collected from you guys about graduate school, the process to get in, what to do once you're in. So I will go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves. Monica, if you want to start.
Sure, yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Monica Vidari. I am a first-year grad student at Stanford University studying astrobiology, and I'm also a George Mason alum. Yeah, is there anything else I should add to that?
Nope, you're good.
I can go next. I'm Ian. I'm a first-year grad student at Michigan State, also a GMU alum. Yeah, happy to answer questions.
I guess it just leaves me. I'm Jeffrey. I'm a second-year PhD student at George Mason, and can't wait to get into this and answer these questions.
Excellent. And thank you all for being on our panel today. We really appreciate it, especially now when people are getting acceptances and rejections, and they're just figuring out where to go next. Okay, so jumping right in, and anyone can answer these. Everyone can answer them, whatever is comfortable for everyone. So how much does a GRE score influence graduate school applications?
Yeah, I can go first just quickly. So I think probably it can definitely help your application if you really get a good score. But I know that a lot of schools are de-emphasizing it, if even requiring it at all. Like MSU actually changed their admissions process so that it was more of a holistic admission as opposed to just looking at the test. But I know that it's being de-emphasized, but I think a lot of the bigger schools do still require it, even if they don't, maybe take it into account as much.
Yeah,
a lot of schools are definitely starting to get rid of the GRE requirement, which I think is awesome. I only applied to schools that didn't require the GRE because I am practicing self-care. I'm not paying $200 for a test that I'm going to purposely score low on, so it's definitely doable to apply to places that don't require the GRE. It's definitely less and less important these days, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I took it twice and got the same score both times. And let me tell you, it wasn't worth it. It's funny, when I was first applying to graduate school, the GRE was like a test that I have to take. Like, I was like, okay, I have to take the GRE 100%, like can't get in without it. And now schools are coming around to, standardized testing is garbage. At least I hope most schools are. So I'd say, take a look at your particular school you want to look at, maybe email some people, see if it's actually weighted a lot. But yeah, I think your best bet is that it's getting phased out.
And just as a note to everyone, if a school says that they're optional but strongly recommended, that's because they can't technically say that they're required, but they're looking at it. As Monica said, practice self-care, maybe perhaps avoid. Excellent. So another student asked, how many schools should they be applying to? I can start there. I applied to 15 at the time. And judging from Jeffrey's face, that's more than you did. Now, one thing I will make sure to mention, if it asks you if you want a waiver, always say yes. The worst thing is no, and the best can, but definitely try for it.
Yeah, I didn't apply to 15. I'll tell you that. I think I applied to like 8. And I think most people have heard the advice of have your reach schools, have your mid schools, and then have your safe schools. And I think that's broadly good advice. Don't sell yourself short, but also if you're, really want to get a PhD program, make sure you have those safe schools for sure.
Yeah, I can only add, oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I applied to 11, but I think, applying to the schools that you're interested in is really the most important thing. And, maybe you increase your chances slightly if you apply to more, but obviously it can be really costly if you don't have those waivers.
Yeah, I applied to 6. I was able to get waivers for all of them. One, I did not get a waiver from the department, but the person that I talked to, who I was reaching out to different professors and talking to them over Zoom to see who could be a potential advisor. And I brought up, so if you're doing that, which you should definitely do that, which I think we might talk about later actually, when you're talking to any potential advisors and you don't see any kind of fee waiver, bring it up with them, because what he ended up doing was he was like, oh, like I've got money for that, like I will personally like waive that. So even if you don't see a waiver on like the department website or whatever advisor, potential advisor that you're talking to, bring it up with them, because they might have funding to waive it for you.
Yes, definitely a good call. And to add on to Jeffrey's point, one thing that I wish I had done is have more safety schools than mid schools, especially in these recent application years. It's gotten real tricky because COVID threw everything off in terms of funding, but more people are being graduated than ever. So it's not the same as applying to undergrad where they'll accept you because you have to pay. It's fully dependent on funding and if there's a professor there to work with you. So like Monica said, definitely do your research and make sure there's someone there that wants you before you pay out that money and apply. So then next, what if I don't have a good GPA?
I could take that one. I had a horrible GPA. I was working the whole time. Y'all know how it goes. I relied a lot though on that work experience. I have a lot of work experience in something that is totally not what I am doing now. But if you're able to like really sell yourself and sell the skills that you've earned, that counts, I think, so much more than your grades. At least it did for me. So definitely don't worry if you got a bad GPA, because I certainly did. I am not the best student. But what really matters is how well you sell yourself on these applications. Like if you worked, I think I actually was able to sell like my bartending experience, or like I can do fast pace and like work with people, and it works. It totally works. So yeah, grades don't really matter as much as you think they do, but the skills that you've learned along the way absolutely matter more.
Yeah, my GPA. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say you're so much more than just a number on a paper. Yeah. Like you're a whole person, and schools will look at that. If you just got to make sure to actually tell them. You got to make sure you're not scared to write about those experiences. I had a lot of experiences undergrad where I was like, oh, that won't matter. Like, why should I tell them? Why should I put that on a resume or in my essay? But you want to make sure they know you as a full person, other than just the number on a GPA.
Yeah, definitely agree. And like Monica said, it's all about selling yourself right. Just steer into the skid. If you have a bad GPA, don't ignore it in your personal statements. Don't own it. Just say, yeah, I had a bad GPA, but here's who I am. That's what I did. I explained that I was working, like Monica, I was working to put myself through school, and that coupled with the rest of my resume was enough for some places to say, well, I mean, she got this GPA while doing all of this stuff. So if we can pay her so that she doesn't have to work, then I'm sure her GPA can get better. So it's all about selling yourself. Make sure that one of your letter writers will acknowledge it for you as well. You saying it matters, a letter writer saying it matters a whole lot more. So make sure you tell someone that you trust, like, hey, acknowledge, my background, who I am, to add on to your whole application.
Yeah, and then one last thing I can add is just like, even if your GPA is bad, if you shine in other areas, which is basically the crux of what everyone else has been saying, if you have good research, skills, or good skills from your work, like all of those other things, and you can sell that, it definitely, can balance out or just, stand high and above over the GPA.
Yes. And just to make sure that it's mentioned, if, even after all that, if you're still too self-conscious to apply with the GPA you have, understandable. There's also still options left. You can either, if you can afford to do this or find someone to fund you to do this, delay your graduation, retake some classes and pop your GPA up. If you can't afford to do so, which is most people, go ahead and graduate on time. There's always post-bachelor's positions. You can always go to industry, build up your resume somewhere else. If you don't have something to speak to at first, gain life experience so that you have something that's much more important than the number. I mean, having been out in the world and actually doing research and actually participating in the field matters so much more than, you know, the grade you got in physics 1 when you were 18. It really does. Great. So then next question, when should I start working on applications?
Well, I feel like this also ties into the other question of how many schools are you applying to? Because you're reapplying in your senior year, I think, for most people. And obviously that's a stressful year and you want to give yourself time to work on your applications. Don't do what I did and start your essays like a month before.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, you know, saying it's and doing it are two different things. But starting a few months before, have people read your essays, try to tailor your essays, you know, to each school. I'd say that's probably fine.
Make sure you change the name of your school and if you have like a
Oh God.
letter. Yeah, one of my friends sent in his Harvard application with, I think it was Michigan State on the on the letter. So just please be careful. It is a good idea to have a general structure. And I think I use the same personal statement for all schools. And it's nice to have a really good structure, tailor it to the advisor that you would want to work with for each school, like their specific like fields or whatever. But I'll just make sure the school name is right, I think, above all.
Yeah, I know I started working on them early, but I already knew I was going to apply for the NSF, which is due in October. So if you're someone that wants to apply for the NSF, they always ask you for the same personal statement, same research statement. It's always the same. So if you I started over the summer to give myself tons and tons of time, reworked it a ton. And like Monica said, I had a very general format for my personal statement, and it was only that very last paragraph that I altered per school. But the nice part about doing it that way is if you get it polished enough to apply to the NSF GRFP, which I highly recommend everyone does, then your application for every single school is pretty much done, with the exception of changing those little tiny details. I know after that, it took me about a month to apply to all of my schools, just because, I mean, it's done. My research is my research, my personal statement is my personal statement, and that's pretty much the case for everyone. So just leave yourself the amount of time that you feel you need to get a good polished statement out the door.
One thing I can add to that is like, definitely agree on starting early. But when you're actually writing your application, I think a good writing, like tip of writing advice is just like, write whatever you think, kind of just like, you know, it could be word salad, but just like get it out there. And so you have something to work with, and then you can worry about editing. So like, even if you think it sounds like weird or something, just write whatever you think, and then you have something to kind of work with. So kind of just stream of consciousness first, and then worry about polishing it.
Definitely agree. It's easier to edit something that's there than to make up words and fill a page. Yeah, I don't think there's much left on that. Other than I will say, plug for on the Spectrum website, there is a grad school organizer available there. It's a spreadsheet where you can keep track of what you finished for each school. If you filled out their general application, if you've submitted your personal and research statements, if there's any other statements, who your letter writers are for that school, if they've submitted their letters yet. Keeping yourself organized is the biggest pain about doing applications. It doesn't matter how good your application is. If you're not organized, then you're going to forget to submit this to this school, or you forgot to ask your letter writer. So as far as starting your applications go, regardless of when you start your personal statement, tell your letter writers and decide on who those are months out. Give them time to write you a good letter. Because you can write and edit your own stuff whenever you want, technically.
I highly recommend doing like a Google Sheet or like a Google Doc. And what I did was I had a Google Sheet and I filled in each school and when the letters like were due or whatever. And so then my reviewers could go in and they could check due dates, and then they could mark off like if they're working on it or if they submitted it or whatever. And that really, really helped me like keep track of all of it.
Yes, that's actually in the organizer that we have too. So you can share in your
Oh,
advisors and yeah, and they can say whether they're working on it, if they've submitted it yet, when it's due, where to send it to, because some schools,
Mhm.
be careful about this part. Some schools will send your advisor an email automatically. Some schools, they tell you, the student, the applicant, where to have your advisor send it to. So keep track of that, because they may not necessarily have received an email, and then your school's not going to get any letters. So keep yourself organized. Organizing should start super early. That should start early. Sorry. We're watching a small pack over here, so that might happen a few times. So unless anyone else has something to add to that, I think we can go to the next question. So what should I look for in a good school?
I can start with this one. So I think main thing is like, ideally it's a school that is, has good facilities and a lot of funding for the area of physics you're interested in. And then like second level would just be like the advisor that you're like maybe thinking of working on a project with is like a good person. Like you can get along with them, talk with them, be open with them. But I think kind of like surface level is just figuring out, okay, what are the schools that like, focus or specialize in the topic that I'm interested in? Because, you can kind of look at generic rankings, but it's really like the specific field that is important. So I think, yeah, just to start your search, it would just be like, look for the, field, the top schools in the field you're interested in, and then kind of break it down based on like, are there projects that you're interested in there? Is there a specific advisor? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think another thing you could look at, and yeah, you have like the top level, like, is it a good school? Does it have the research I want? Does it have a nice advisor and an advisor that's willing to fund me? But I think another big portion is the school in an area that you think will fulfill you? Like, and sorry, I'm kind of answering the next question prematurely. GMU is it's in the DC area. And so that's also a big reason why I came here, is because not only did it have funding for me, had an amazing advisor, and it's a good school, it's also an area that I love. So I think that's also a thing you could look for in a grad school. Is it in an area that you'll be happy in? If you like being out in, I don't know, middle of Indiana somewhere, that's you. If you like being near DC like I do, then you can, look at GMU.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're going to be spending like at least 5 years in that place. So are there going to be people that you want to be around? Is it going to be an area that you like genuinely want to live in? And are you going to be with an advisor that you could see yourself like spending multiple years doing multiple projects with? I also looked a lot at like other potential people that I could work with, like if there were people adjacent to my advisor that I could also do some other projects, because like having some freedom in like the fields and the kind of questions that I could answer was like one of my big things. Pay is also definitely a big thing that I looked at. I wanted to have like a livable wage. Granted, like wherever you go, you are most likely going to be underpaid as a graduate student. So like that's kind of the first part. But some places pay a little bit more than others too. So I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable. I did not want to live with like 6 roommates anymore. So I made sure that was a thing. And I think probably the big thing for me, and I'm also kind of answering the next question, is that like I chose Stanford because I am very lazy and the class requirements are very, very little. And I really didn't want to have to be doing all that, So I also looked at what was required of me, and I go through life doing the bare minimum, so I'm able to do that here. I hope my advisor's not listening to this, but it's okay, she knows. But I didn't really want to do exams and all that homework and all that stuff. I wanted to focus mostly on my research. So that was a big reason that I chose Stanford.
Yeah, definitely. Like the biggest thing to remember, in my opinion, is that you are a whole person and you're not just going to be a little student robot for the next 5 years. So make sure you want to live there, try to figure out what the other graduate student environment was like. I know I didn't want to go a place where it was, every man for himself. I wanted a place with a community of graduate students. That's important. Small stuff, climate. It's important. If you hate the cold, don't go to the northern United States. Like, it's just not going to be worth the mental health burden on you. And, you know, if you have a way to listen to the Whisper Network, listen to the Whisper Network. It's there and it's right. So if somebody is saying, avoid this school, avoid this department at all costs, it's not for no reason. And if they're saying avoid the department, it's not because there's just one bad apple. It's because it's a bushel of them. Prioritize yourself. It doesn't help anyone if you go to grad school for a couple of years and then burn yourself out and leave the program. That's not why you should be doing this. And I guess going on to kind of the next question about why we chose the schools that we did, since they do go together very well. I know I can speak for myself. I chose Mason because they accepted me. It was a bad application year, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was rough. And there is absolutely no shame in going to a school because they were the ones that accepted you and you didn't get others. If you don't want to go to that school, don't. Take a year off, take several years off, figure out what you want to do with your life instead. But a big thing to remember is not to hinge your self-confidence or your self-esteem on how many, you know, acceptances you got, because those are, you know, wildly subjective. It depends on who has money, who has pull in the department. Does the one professor doing your research want more students to begin with? I mean, they're looking at you, this is true, but they're also looking at how well you fit within what their department needs. And it's not a mark on you if you're not what the department needs right then. It's really not.
That just reminded me of a quote. You could be the whole package delivered at the wrong address. And I feel like that's a good encompassing of what you just said.
I like that.
You could be a perfect
I've ever
applicant.
heard that before.
I know, that's a really good one.
You could be the perfect applicant. Yeah, but you know, if it's just not the time and not the, you know, things don't fit together right, then don't be ashamed.
Yep, exactly that.
I want to kind of like emphasize the Whisper Network thing that Natasha was talking about. Please, 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 like, talk to other PhD students, like, get to know the faculty that you're going to be working with. And it's like a lot of people, like if you go on like Twitter, for example, like a lot of people will talk about like how stressful grad school is and like how some of their advisors can do some like pretty crappy things or whatever. And it's not really meant to scare you away, but you just kind of have to realize that like there's a lot of good that comes in grad school. Like, even though I'm underpaid, this is the most I've ever made in my life, you know, like there's some like good stuff that comes with it. But you also have to kind of realize like the ways in which academia can fail you are also really severe. So if you end up with a less than ideal advisor situation, make sure you have a backup, make sure you're going to have like your institution's going to be able to support you and stuff like that. Because I'm going to be completely real with y'all, like Stanford geology has a lot of issues, but I chose it in part because there are people in there that can help me navigate the issues. So I just cannot emphasize the Whisper Network enough, especially if you are a woman and especially if you are a person of color. Please access your Whisper Network. Please, please, please.
Yes, and following on that, a point I forgot to mention, when you email graduate students to ask them questions about the department, about the vibe, about their advisor, email them to set up a meeting. Do not ask them in that email. They will not tell you, because that leaves a paper trail. It's not how the Whisper Network works. Ask for a meeting, ask for it to be on Zoom if you can, and if that person is willing, ask for it to be outside of office hours, so it's more likely they are not in the office and that they are in the comfort of their home. This is sensitive material. You need to know it, but you have to make sure that you're protecting the person that has to tell you. You have to, it goes both ways. You can't put someone else in danger for your own edification. So definitely make sure of that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Another thing I'll add is just like one of the questions that is a decent question to ask is like sort of what is the atmosphere around leaving your advisor? So if you like, you know, get an advisor, choose an advisor, but then you're like, not so much after like 6 months, you know, is it kind of like you're locked in, or are they open about like, no, totally, you know, go. And obviously it's going to vary from professor to professor, but it's not a bad question to ask a grad student who's like, especially if you're going to be joining their prospective group, you ask them like, hey, how open do you think the professor is to me leaving if I just work for you, like, that kind of thing. And so those kinds of questions can then kind of give you, because you want a professor who's going to be totally willing to like give you up, and it's like, okay, try whatever you're interested in, as opposed to one who's expecting you to, work a lot, especially when you're taking classes and teaching.
Yeah, 100%. It's a hard lesson to learn, but no one's going to respect your boundaries until you set them and you respect them for yourself. And it's difficult to do. It really is. It's one of the most difficult things you can do, but you have to put yourself first. It might feel selfish. It is. You have to be selfish because no one's looking out for you except for you. So don't feel guilty about that. Don't feel guilty about jumping on a career opportunity. Don't feel guilty about saying no. You don't even have to, there is no reason for you to have to give an excuse or a reason. You don't have to say, it's my birthday. You don't have to say, oh, because I'm burning out. No is a complete sentence. And no one's owed your time unless they're going to pay you for it. And even then they need your approval on it. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Perfect. So unless someone else has something to add, I'm sure we're going to like loop back to this topic with the nature of the questions. Oh yeah. Very next one. What do you recommend for a work-life balance?
Man, set your boundaries now and be so upfront with your advisor. Again, like the reason that I'm here is because mostly because my advisor, when I was meeting with her over Zoom, before I even started applying to grad school, I was meeting with people that I thought would be cool advisors. And one of the big things that I asked was like, yo, let's talk work-life balance, because I really don't want to be working weekends. I really don't want to be, pulling all these out. All the scary things you read about grad school, it's all manufactured. Like, we're all just big nerds, there's no reason for us to have like working all these big hours and stuff like that. And so I brought it up with her and she's like, yeah, that's totally ridiculous. Like, you should have your weekends, you should have your holidays. We are going to, if worse comes to worse, then yeah, you might have to work a late night, but that should not be the norm. That should not be the case. And that was the biggest reason that I chose here. And honestly, there have been some times where like I did have to work a little bit late because like, life happens. It definitely happens. But I have genuinely never had to work a weekend. And I have genuinely never had to work a holiday or a late night. And it has made like all the difference. It has made all the difference. So yeah, that's also, I would say, the work-life balance thing starts when you're like interviewing potential advisors for sure, and kind of get their read on like what they're gonna expect from you. So yeah.
One thing I'll add is just like making sure that you, like, if you have an assignment, just breaking it up into like smaller chunks and doing it incrementally. So like basically like time management, if you can do that, then like most things won't be that stressful, because like, most, at least from what I've experienced in grad school so far, most of it isn't, terribly difficult, as long as you're able to like do it in chunks and make sure you have, you space it out so that you're not like waiting till the end of the weekend to like do the 3 assignments that are due the next day. So I think a lot of the time, it can be really stressful, but only if you, put things off or don't do things, when maybe you could have done it earlier. That said, though, obviously, like, you don't want to be in a place where you're going to be overworked and there's going to be no way to actually space it out, sustainably. But just time management, very important. Also creating a spreadsheet of like when things are due and just like creating an agenda or something, or any way to basically like organize yourself. Super helpful.
Yep. I highly recommend Todoist. It's wonderful. I will be singing its praises for the end of my days, because you can break everything up into subjects and sub-subjects and subtasks, and you can leave comments and upload files, and it's wonderful. But like Ian said, just find a way to organize yourself that works and go with it. And also remember, work-life balance looks different for everyone. There's no traditional way that it looks. Like, I can't work at a desk from 9 to 5. That doesn't happen. I can't hold my focus for that long. So my idea of work-life balance is that I work longer days, but I spend the whole day out on the couch with a TV show going. Takes me a little bit longer to do the work, but it's what works for you that sets a work-life balance. If you feel comfortable and you don't feel overworked within reason, like everyone else is saying, life happens sometimes, and sometimes you have crunch periods, and it's just kind of the way of academia. Sometimes there are proposals due and applications due, and sometimes you have to do what you have to do, but that should definitely not be the norm. And if you have a good advisor, if you have a crunch time of a week, they'll tell you to take it easy the week following. They will do that for you. You should not have to ask for that. They will know to balance that out for you.
Yeah, there's so many good things said there by all of you. I guess I'll just add that you have to make your boundaries. You have to set your non-negotiables. Like I kind of did the same thing as Monica, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to work weekends. That is never going to happen. That's kind of like my non-negotiable. And of course, sometimes it does happen. Sometimes I just pull things up because I'm interested. But yeah, set your boundaries. Know what works for you.
And one thing that I want to make sure to mention, part of work-life balance, I mean, if it works for you that all you want to do is just sit in your house by yourself during your life part, that's you. I know for me that part of the life balance is going out and seeing friends and doing things that may not necessarily be the responsible thing. But for most of us, we're in our early 20s still. You don't have to be a mini adult. You can go and get into tomfoolery and mischief and have loads of fun and still be a professional research scientist. I promise they can coexist. You're in graduate school, but you're still a student. So, make use of that student ID, go get those movie theater discounted tickets, go live your life still.
So, yes, have fun. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Have fun, guys. Like you're in your 20s. It's a good time. Don't waste your life. I don't know. Well, not that you're wasting your life getting a PhD or anything, but you know what I'm trying to say. Have fun.
Exactly.
LOL.
This is probably some of the least we'll ever get paid and some of the least amount of time we're ever gonna have. And by golly, figure out a way to shove some more time in there to have fun and make memories, because what else are you gonna, I mean, yeah, you get a PhD out of it. Yeah, okay, whatever. But a piece of paper is a piece of paper. You want to have memories that are fun to look back on, even if those memories are weird late nights in the lab with the other people in your cohort. That counts, I promise, as long as you're not all forced to be there. Many asterisks in that sentence, but I think everyone gets the picture. If anyone else has anything else to add, again, I think this is one of those things we're just going to keep hidden as we go on. Is it normal to go visit a grad school you were thinking about applying to, or is it just more of an undergrad thing?
I can speak for MSU. They typically will fly out all the prospective students to like kind of have a 3-day sort of just like rendezvous with professors. They get dinner and the hotel is paid for. So that in that case, it's paid for by the university. They didn't do it during COVID. It was all on Zoom. But this year, while it is on Zoom, they're flying out students who are interested in coming in person. So I think it definitely, like, especially if you're, have to choose between two schools that like you're interested in, but then it comes down to maybe environment or like, how are the people there? Is the campus 30,000 people or 5,000 people, et cetera. But I think definitely it's worthwhile visiting. Obviously it depends on money / if you have time to do that, but it's worth it if you can.
Yeah, Stanford has something similar. It's actually this week. We actually have a dinner tonight with the incoming class, but it's our welcome week essentially. This is after they found out that they were accepted though, and mine was kind of weird because we hadn't gotten our official acceptances yet, but this was just kind of like an interview thing for me. Mine was virtual, of course, because of COVID, so I don't know how all that's work. I've honestly never visited any school that I applied to, even in undergrad. But I mean, if you can, or even just go online and get a sense of the resources that they have for you, I mean, it definitely couldn't hurt.
Yeah, I think I had one official interview and it was at GMU, or one official visit. The other grad schools I applied to, I kind of just went and walked around. So, I mean, in that sense, I visited all the schools, but it was more just for fun.
That's hilarious. Yeah, just walk into a school, like walk into a
Yeah.
class, gaslight the teacher and be like, oh, I go here. Boom.
True.
You're there now.
LOL.
This is part of the fun, right?
Don't even apply. Just walk into school and be like, I'm here.
That's
Show
like
up every
gatekeep girl
day.
pause. Let's just go for it. Yeah, I mean, if they offer to send you out, take the offer, even on the very selfish minimal level of, hey, free vacation, you know, do it if you can. But I think I only visited a couple of undergrad schools. And that was just more of an excuse for me to go out to California more than anything, because those are the only schools I visited. But definitely, if you can, if it is feasible, there's a lot to be said to walking on the campus and just looking around, because genuinely, sometimes you just walk onto that campus and you go, no. And that's enough. That is enough for you to say no if you do not want to. So definitely important to do.
Yeah, I think well, can we talk trash about other schools?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm ready.
It was Maryland's campus that I just like went to visit, and I walked into the physics building and I was like, this is trash. Get rocked. Emma went to Maryland. And yeah, so I was like, ugh, this is a yikes.
Exactly. If you don't feel like you belong there, don't go there. Asterisk, especially if someone else makes you feel like you don't belong there, definitely don't go there. That's important. Excellent. So just kind of skipping around a little bit, because we've covered a lot of stuff, but I want to make sure we cover this one. How do the stipends work? How do you get a TA or an RA? What's the workloads, expectations, tuition waivers? How many credits are covered? Let's just dive into money talk. Let's do it.
This is so different, even depending on like the department. Like it's even so different within the geological sciences department in Stanford. It's so different depending on like what kind of advisor you get and like stuff like that. So this is definitely a conversation. Like probably the first question that you need to ask if you're interviewing like potential advisors is like, what's this pay situation going to be like? Also ask for different fellowships. So like my advisor, when I was applying, and even it was actually kind of funny because I got notifications that I won these 2 fellowships from Stanford before I got my official acceptance. So I was like, does this mean I'm in? Or so it was kind of weird. But ask your advisor if there's like other fellowships that the university offers. It could be that like they don't even know. But like you could look into that. What they do is they like put you, the student, up for nomination. And if you get nominated, then what happens with me at least, I don't have to TA because I'm covered for my first 3 years because of these fellowships. So look into or ask your advisor if there's fellowships that the university can offer or whatever. But honestly, like the whole TA, RA stuff, how the tuition waivers work, your credits, that's going to vary so much, even within your own department that you're looking at. So this is just the conversation you have to have with your potential advisor.
Yeah, definitely.
I think so for me, it was like, I got my acceptance letter and then it was like, it included the offer, like the financial offer. So I think typically it's going to be like, they'll either give you an offer for TAing or like a teaching assistant, or, you know, it'll be like an RA-ship, or I think in general for first year students, it's probably either TA or a fellowship. I mean, maybe it's an RA, but I think it's more likely you just get a fellowship or something. But it does depend on if your advisor has money and can just fund you. Because I do know students who have that. But typically it'll just come in your offer. And then I think a standard thing is like 3 classes are covered under the stipend, like 3 courses basically. So like 9 credits, maybe less, I don't know. But for MSU, it's 9. And then like, you know, in terms of work, I think for MSU, it's like you have to work 20 hours per week. And then like the other 20 hours is kind of like your class designation basically. But yeah, that's just sort of specific to this. And it definitely does vary across department and school.
Yeah, Mason covers 2 classes for you on a TA-ship. So the benefits to being an RA or on a fellowship versus a TA is that your time is more your own, and you report to less people, basically. If you're not on an RA ship, you report to your advisor. If you win your own fellowship or are awarded a fellowship like the NSF or many interdepartmental ones, then for the most part, you're your own boss, which is really nice to an extent. So that it can vary just wildly. Usually fellowships / RAs are paid a little bit more and can take more credits. But again, that varies based on advisor and fellowship. I mean, I know that this comes back to choosing a good research advisor, right? Like you should have a research advisor, especially if you're doing research your first year on a fellowship or on an RA. You're still a student, you're still taking classes that first year. So you should have an advisor that isn't expecting you to put in, 40 hours of research right away, because being a student takes up most of your time until you're done with classes and qualifying exams or whatever other kind of barrier is set up there. So that's usually the difference between those two. Now, I mean, it depends. I know a couple of people that actually love TAing. They don't want to stop TAing because they like teaching. And if that's you, that's great. Take the TA ship. Even if you're awarded an RA, you can actually say no and say you'd prefer to remain a TA, because I guarantee you someone else will take that research position. Which is not to say you can't be doing research while you're also a TA. That can definitely happen. It's just putting a lot on your plate if you're still taking classes. But, again, that varies person by person based on what you think you can handle.
Yeah. I'll add a word of caution. I was an RA. I got in as an RA at GMU my first year. So I was just doing research. I wasn't TAing. And like you said, Natasha, you're kind of your own boss. Besides, of course, your advisor. It's kind of easy to get lazy because when you're on your, there's not a lot of, like you said, there's not a lot of people you have to report to. There's not a lot of, and if you have an advisor that's very laid back, then it's easy just to say, oh, I don't have to, I can do that later. I don't have to, to meet my advisor for another week. I can get this plot done the day before, who cares? So it does take discipline if you're an RA. And yeah, just back to the question in general, it's very hard because every school is different, every advisor is different. So when you're coming into the school, it's definitely a conversation you need to have, like Monica said.
One last technical thing I'll add is just, I think, so tuition waivers are usually external to the stipend you get. So like the offer that you're given is not going to be like, you have to use that to pay for classes. I think that's generally true. You definitely want to ask that question, but yeah, just as a technical for people who are thinking about that.
Yes, you're definitely right. I think some schools, they'll do the offer letter, and the way it's set up is it says that you're awarded $60,000 a year or something. And then they tell you like this much is cost of education and this much is stipend, because you don't see all of that. There's only so much that. Another thing to watch out for as far as the money goes, because I learned this the hard way this year. There are lots of fellowships that come to you as untaxed income. What that means for you that you're in a world of hurt every April unless you figure out a way to do the quarterly estimates. And that requires a lot of paperwork and all of that fun stuff. So to anyone used to getting a W-2 and using TurboTax, which I was one of those people, it changes tremendously because you can't do that anymore since you're technically self-employed. So that's another thing to be careful about. There's a lot of benefits to fellowships. You usually end up getting paid a little bit more than a usual TA or RA. But it also means you have to be responsible for a lot more of the finance side of things. Because no one is your boss, you have to be your own proponent. Like for instance, at the beginning of my fellowship, my pay came to me 4 weeks late. I only get paid once a month, guys. That means I just went a month without pay. And you have to fight for yourself. I mean, obviously you should have an advisor that like tries to help you. Like that's the idea, right? But at the end of the day, you're the person that's in charge of that. And so you have to go out and fight things, which is not fun. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't accept fellowships, accept them, put that feather in your cap and don't wait to figure out the taxes until January like I did, and then you panic and then you cry and then you realize you can't use TurboTax and it gets very interesting. So figure that out early. Great. So one other, well, not one other, but the next thing that we can cover. We hear a lot about the red flags of a PhD advisor, lots and lots and lots of red flags. What are some green flags? What are some signs of a good advisor?
Someone who cares about you and lets you be your own person and knows you have a life outside of grad school, and who tells you that. It's you know, we've all heard horror stories of, at least I have, of PhD advisors telling you to giving you insane deadlines and so much work. I know my sister, when she was getting her PhD, would always rant to me about how her professor wanted things on like weekends and would roast her for not getting things to her, which was completely insane. And honestly, that's how I thought a PhD would be. I kind of had this vision of just all advisors being like that, and then getting to GMU and having my advisor, I've realized that, oh my God, like advisors can be so nice and can make your life so much easier. And I think maybe that's a question you should ask yourself. If your advisor is making your life easier, then that's a good thing. If they're not, then time to hightail it out of there.
One really basic thing for me, I didn't even realize it was missing until I had it. I was like, oh my God, is this what support feels like? My current advisors thank me for my work. No matter how much of it I got done. Like sometimes I'll walk into a meeting, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't get enough done this week, whatever. And they will interrupt me to say, thank you for what you got done. This is awesome. This is really great. Let's dive into it. It's so small. It's so small, but it shows that they're treating you as a human, as a peer, as a colleague, and not as their worker bee. And that distinction is very important. You're not, no one should make you feel like you are below them because you are a student, because you are still doing research, you are still doing work, you are still a scientist. Not in training, you are a scientist, and you should be treated as such.
I'll just add, another thing is like thinking about sort of group dynamics. And so like, do you want an advisor who's going to kind of promote, I guess, group unity in ways that you are, comfortable with? So like, do you want a social advisor who's like, let's go to happy hour every week, or like every, once a week or something like that? Or, are they planning like vacations or trips where the group can kind of go on a hike or something? Another thing is like having an updated website is also a good indicator, or like a good looking website. Sometimes, if it's not, I mean, that's obviously a small thing, but it's these tiny things that sometimes matter, to indicate sort of an organized PhD advisor. But yeah, I'll just add that. Also, my computer may die, in which case I'll just relocate, but I'll be back. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
100% on the website though. Like,
for sure.
that was definitely like, when I was applying, I was like, damn, this website's trash.
Yeah.
For like some of the schools. And that kind of gave a good indicator of the school, or of the group in general.
Yeah, I think the green flags, this is also something that I think is going to vary person to person. I think it's really, y'all, before you start to interview potential advisors, I think it's good to like ask yourself this question and then come up with a list of questions based off of what you want your green flags to be. So for me, obviously, like the work-life balance thing was like one of the first things I asked, the pay, of course. But then I also kind of asked questions that like kind of get the sense of like what kind of person that my advisor is. And so I was straight up, I was just like, yo, I've heard some things about Stanford DS, especially being a woman, it's kind of scary being there. And then like she launched into a rant about like some well-known harassers in exoplanet sciences. Is just like, yeah, it's so ridiculous and like blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that's the one. Like she gets it. She absolutely knows what I'm talking about. And so, I mean, it really just depends on like what kind of green flags you want to look for, kind of like what Ian was saying. If you want a more social advisor, if you want someone that's more focused on like group dynamics, or someone that's going to take you to conferences or like networking or whatever. Think about those questions like for yourself, and then ask those questions when you meet with people. Get a sense of like who they are, and if they fit whatever your personal green flags are, then yeah, absolutely go for it. I'm gonna relocate because this conference room I think is booked in like 5 minutes, but I'm just gonna walk downstairs. I will turn my camera off.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely. And to add on to this for green flags, you want an advisor that's supportive. And I know that's like super like, duh, of course you want an advisor that's supportive, but in things outside of just the research, they should care about you outside of just you being their worker. Like, oh, this class is going really difficult, or, you know, there's a professor that's giving you trouble. They should have your back. They should try to figure out ways to help you, or even something smaller. If you're having personal life troubles, whatever, you don't have to tell that to your advisor. But if you say, oh, you know, I'm okay, but just my personal life is in shambles right now, you should have an advisor that says, oh my God, are you okay? Can I help you? Do you want to cancel this meeting? Like you shouldn't have to ask for basic human decency. It should just be there already. And you can tell a lot about that. I mean, I know that even something as small as starting a meeting by saying, oh, hey, what did you get up to this weekend, is a really big green flag for me, because it acknowledges that, you know, I have a personal life because I'm a person. Like, it's okay to not just jump straight into the science all the time.
Yeah, I just want to say that, like, it threw me through a loop through like one of my first meetings with my advisor. And I walked in there expecting to, you know, just talk about science immediately. And she goes, hey, Jeffrey, like, how are you? Like, and she knew I like to like work out and like run and swim. And she's like, are you swimming? Like, are you working out still? And I was like, what? You're asking about my personal life? What the heck? And it just makes you feel really good. Like, as a person, like knowing this person that like you're, you know, you feel like you're actually connecting with someone. And that kind of just makes the research easier too.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal scenario, your PhD advisor shouldn't be someone that you're like counting down the days until you can stop working with them. In an ideal scenario, you should think to yourself, man, I want to like keep working with this person as a colleague. Like when you graduate, like this can be a very important connection. Your advisor should be someone that has your back and pushes you forward, because that's their job, right? Like obviously their career has to progress, but them being your advisor, they are taking on the idea of like, okay, whenever there's a career advancer opportunity, I'm putting up my student, not me, because that's who should matter right now, is the early career person. Obviously, I'm not saying mid-career people should just stop advancing, but you know, you should put up your students for things more than you put yourself up for things. That's what you're doing by signing on to take a student. And I know that we're running close to time. So just to kind of wrap this up on a good note, how about we have everyone share like one really good positive thing that they've experienced in grad school so far? Okay, Jeffrey.
Sorry.
Okay, I mean, I can start. I was able to have a day last semester where I happened to already have my homework done, and I got to spend the entire day doing research. This was one of the times that I pulled a really late night because I wanted to get to the bottom of something. I spent that entire day just doing research and just being a scientist. Like, I think it ended up being like 9 to 8 or something, because I just didn't want to, I like had the bit between my teeth. Like I couldn't drop it until it was done. And that was really cool because it reminded me like why I'm struggling through classes in the first place is to get to a point where every single day is like that.
Yeah, I can share one that's kind of interesting. Definitely, like I think any time you make a research breakthrough or like you achieve sort of like one of those small victories, it's like the best feeling in the world. A couple times, or even if you just correct a mistake, a couple times I've like dropped these like 3mm $1,600 samples that are like almost irreplaceable, and very hard to find on the floor, but I found them, and it worked out well. So that was definitely a good experience. I think also creating a study group for classes, and then after you're done studying, going out to dinner with them and just hanging out, and then acing the exam the next day or something like that. That's a positive, fun experience where it's studying becomes less taxing because you're with other people who are also having to deal with it.
Yeah, I'd say well, gosh, there are two moments I'm trying to pick from, or two experiences. One is I got to go observing in Hawaii at the Keck telescope, and that was just a wonderful opportunity, and it was very motivating. And the other one is publishing my first author paper, which contributing, not to my own horn, but being able to contribute to science, even and that's what we're all doing. Not even if you don't publish a paper, it's just the ability to contribute to science and push the ball forward one inch at a time, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any one event or something like that, but I think overall, when I think about it, it's just the gravity of being where I am and what I'm doing. I'm the first in my family, well, first generation to graduate college in general, but also the first to get a PhD, and that's a huge deal. And thinking about how my abuela would have been so proud of me if I becoming Dr. Vidari, and like I was saying before, there's a lot of bullshit about grad school and academia, of course, and we are going to get underpaid, but also I was kind of saying before, this is the most money I've ever seen in my life, and the biggest income that anybody in my family has ever seen. And so I'm doing things oh my God, we're playing volleyball every weekend with my friends, and I'm gonna go rock climbing, and I never would have imagined I'd be doing these things, So it's cool because I found a lot of really, really good friends here in the span of just a couple months. And I don't know, and just having an awesome advisor, and then just the gravity of being at a Stanford, who is she? You know what I mean? It's just the whole gravity of being man, I'm really gonna have doctor in front of my name, and I'm really here at an institution, despite the ways that academia kind of pushes you out and stuff like that, I'm here despite all of that, with a good support system, with a good advisor. So I think it's just the gravity of being here. I think it's really fun. It is the cause for a little bit of guilt. I'm not gonna lie, that definitely comes with being a first student, but it's also sometimes you got to sit back and think wow, I'm really out here, so that's been pretty cool.
Yep, you're 100% just right on the money with that one. And I think if I could wrap up with just one thing, just enjoy the small stuff, really. I mean, in undergrad, we had the physics lounge, as Ian well remembers. And I mean, you said you were working there. You weren't ever. And, you try, you fail. And, I mean, obviously COVID hit, so that interrupted a lot of it, and we never got to go back there. But even without COVID, those days are going to end eventually, and eventually it'll just be a good memory hanging out with your friends in the study room. So even the part that sucks, even the part where you're all studying for an exam that every single one of you is gonna have to be graded on a curve because you're all about to bomb it, you're gonna look back fondly on those moments. So try to enjoy them while they're there, obviously, as much as possible. I mean, it's not fun to have to come to terms with your eventual failure of an exam, but I promise most of the time they'll curve. I promise. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the recording. Thank you so much to all of our panelists today. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, this is great.
It was fun. Thanks.